What's going on, guys? This is Josh at ACI. Today we've got a 19 GLI behind us. We're going to be doing some lowering springs to it, rear sway bar, 034's camster plates, upper strut mount bearings, rear sway bar end links, dog bone insert, and a locking collar kit to the subframe. All the parts over here in the floor of what's going on in the car. We're going to put S3 springs on it because it has DCC, which is dynamic chassis control, and we'll explain a little more about that later on. We've got all the parts needed to install it and make this a very deliable and very fun car to go through corners, do track days with, autocross, and when we're done with it, we're going to switch out the wheels and tires for a little more aggressive stance and a little more aesthetically pleasing wheel. So stay tuned for the rest of the video and get ready for some fun. Alright guys, we're back. We're starting the front suspension first. On the front, we're going to put the camster plates, which is caster and camber from 034. It's an extra negative 1.5 degrees of camber on top of the already negative camber the car has in the factory. And it gives you an extra degree of caster in the front of the car as well to help with steer ahead, returnability, and straight ahead driving. It's something new from 034. We've put 1.7 on GTI, and the guy's in love with them. So this GLI is going to be a track rat. It's going to be on rails, but driving a go-kart that weighs 3,500 pounds. It's a very fun car. We're going to pull the front strut assemblies out, put springs on them, the camster plates, new upper strut mount bearings. We'll go underneath, and we'll put on the locking collar kit and the dog bone insert upper and lower with the new arm from 034. This is a full 034 build. 034 Motorsports is a vendor of ours. We're partnered with them, and they will be getting this video as well. They will be tagged in the video, and if you have any questions about their products or any concerns or any ideas you have, contact them, contact us. We would be glad to put these parts on for you and make this GLI, which is going to be a completely amazing car, the same for you as well. If you have a GLI, GTI, Mark 5, Mark 6, Mark 7, any of those, Audis as well. These platforms are Legos. Building blocks. They're easy to do, they're fun to do, they're fun to build. Alright, so we got the wheels off, back down to the ground. We're going to start up top under the hood cowl, taking the strut mount bolts out first. Most of your MQB cars, all you have to do is pull your hood cowl strip off here. Now on the Golf Rs, the sport wagons, there are clips every so often along here that you'll pop off. The GLIs do not have that, but you do want to take these foam inserts out. They just slide out. Set them to the side on each side they come off of. It helps hold the hood panel or the lower trim cowl back in place. Take the cowl and pick it up slightly, not too far, you'll break it. There's a 13 millimeter bolt here. Take out 2 of the 3. Don't take them all out, otherwise it will fall and it can crush your foot. Also guys, this is how I do this. This is my professional way of doing it, how I've done it for years. I'm a trained professional. If you try it at home and get hurt, I'm not responsible. So don't try it at home unless you know what you're doing. I will describe every tool we use and the sizes. Now I'll take that one loose a couple turns just to get it down to make it easier to work with. I am using Milwaukee 1/4 inch long reach electric ratchet. You can use hand ratchets as well. It takes a little longer. Again, pull the flap up just enough to get reach in there and take the bolts out. Since we're replacing the upper strut mounts with camster plates, we don't need these 13s anymore. The kit will come with new bolts. They are shorter because they have to clear the camber and caster pre-adjusted point inside of that plate. So if you're doing these at home and you're doing this on your own, do not reuse these bolts. They will not work. They will hit, they will damage the plates. So keep that in mind. The instructions, 034 does not include instructions in the box, but there are website that has instructions that you can print off. The bolts come in the box. These are pretty straightforward and cut and dry. So, like I said, don't reuse the 13s if you're doing the upgrades for the caster camber plates. If you're putting in regular strut mounts, you can most definitely reuse the bolts. It's not a big deal. If the car's got a bunch of miles on it, I'll probably replace them. If it's really rusty, replace them. If they're not really rusty, they don't look like a bunch of miles on them, reuse them. It's not a big deal. So to start, the way I take them apart, is there's a 24 millimeter 12-point bolt, which is your axle bolt right here. I take the axle bolt out because I take the whole assembly off as a unit. I also pull the caliper off, the sway bar end link, the tie rod, and unplug the ABS sensor from the wheel hub side. And on this car, because it has DCC, we'll unplug the shock. And we'll go into how a little operation DCC right quick. DCC is dynamic chassis control. Volkswagen and Audi use it. Audi calls it Magna Ride. Volkswagen calls it dynamic chassis control. The shocks here have a valve that's right here. This valve is electronically controlled. The valve will variate how much of an opening the orifice has for the shock travel and the fluid. So it's not magnetic. That is a common misconception. These are not magnetic shocks like GM uses. These are 10 times better and 10 times more reliable. Yes, they do fail. Yes, they do go bad. No, they're not something that breaks all the time. These I've seen go 80,000 miles, no issues. I've seen some go 40,000 miles, have blowout seals. It's all about how they're manufactured and different things. There's a lot of factors to that. But dynamic chassis control is driver-controlled valving inside the car. It gives you a couple of different options. You have comfort, sport, custom, and sometimes race or some other ones. The sport mode makes the shock more stiffer, so it handles better. Comfort makes it more of a floaty ride like a Cadillac and makes it more smooth in the corners. DCC was offered on pretty much all Golf Rs, the 35th anniversary GLIs, and your Autobahn GTIs. However, not every Autobahn GTI got it. Some did, some didn't. I can't explain the rhyme or reason. My GTI has it. It's an Autobahn. This GLI has it. I did a bunch of these springs with DCC. All your RS3s have it. Like I said, Audi calls it Magna Ride. It's pretty much the exact same system to a T. So if you have DCC, take precaution when you take these out. You can break them, and they are very expensive. And I mean expensive. So be careful with them. The best way to get these clips out is to push up on the connector, pull down on the tab, and pull off. So you got your connector here. You're going to push in, push down, and pull out. It's the best way to get them out. Don't use a screwdriver. Don't get a pick. You'll break the lock tab. If the lock tab breaks, inside here, it's probably hard to see, but there's an orange seal. That's your weather pack connector. Weather pack keeps out water and corrosion. You break this tab, it can't lock into place. The weather pack then becomes your lock, and weather pack is not forever. Weather pack will go bad. It will dry rot. It will swell. It will bust. It will fall out, and then you have a connector that falls out. You get a fault on the dash. You don't want that. So let's avoid that. Same thing goes for the this one. Exact same principle, but the tab's in a different locking spot. So you push in, take your thumb, pull back. If you notice, if you pull back, it opens it up. Unplug it. Same thing, weather pack connector. Don't break the tab. Don't get another screwdriver, pick, whatever, and mess it around. It's going to break it. Trust me. I've seen it happen a million times. Lay this wire back out of the way where it won't get hit by nothing. Out of sight, out of mind. Don't forget to plug it back up. So to get these little clips out, small pry bar, small screwdriver, something like that. Get underneath it, twist, keep your finger over top of it, and twist it out, and it pops right out. If it goes flying away, you'll probably find it. Maybe. Keep it in a safe place. They are needed. It keeps the brake hose in place. Okay? We're pulling that out because we're going to pull the caliper off. We're going to hang the caliper up because we're going to pull the front strut assembly out. So we need the caliper off to do that. I like to hang it on the control arm right here on the back side. These caliper bolts are 21 millimeter. The sway bar and or the tie rod is also 21. Take the nut loose, keep it safe. The sway bar end link is 18. Take it loose. Put the nut back on it so you don't lose it. The ball joint nuts, those three are a 16. They're straight down here on the bottom. There's 3 of them on each side. Take them all loose. Take them off. And there they are. Pull the control arm down a little bit. Get a little play in it. It'll come right out. Put those up here out of the way. Now, you don't need to compress the piston back in the caliper, but I like to take and pull in just a hair, get a little play in the caliper. Unless you know what you're doing, don't do this at home. I've done this a million times, so this is how I get the tie rod undone. take a hammer and get it right there. They pop right out. All you're doing is jostling the wedge out of it. There's a cone in here that keeps it intact, plus the nut. Unless you know what you're doing, don't do that, because if you hit these threads or hit this, you can damage them, you will break them, and they are not cheap. Common theme here. You break stuff, it's expensive. So be careful. Try not to hit anything. Remember, you have to drive it to work on Monday morning or to school or anywhere. So keep in mind, if it's your car, you have to drive it so when you get done with it. Make sure you still drive it. So now that the tie rod's loose and out, we can take and turn this to get these out. They're both 21s. It'll just hang right there for a second. Take these bolts, set them up here out of the way. Take your caliper. And he's got a lip on this rotor, so we might have to compress it some. If there's a big lip on the rotor like this one, take that same pry bar from earlier and gently compress back the piston in there. If it will, it may not, because too much. If not, you take a on the top here and pull it back. It'll come out of the lip. And that hose you took off earlier is now out of your way. You'll take this hook it through the caliper, and you'll hang the caliper right on the control arm. This way the hose doesn't get damaged, caliper don't get broken, all that good stuff. Now we'll take out the axle bolt. Keep in mind, these have Loctite on them. Technically, yes, they're a one-time use. Again, if they're not rusted, they're not corroded, they're not all messed up looking, it hasn't been out 400 times, red Loctite back on this, you're good to go. Another little tip, when you go back in with the axle, put some green Loctite on the axle splines. It helps hold it in place better. The GTIs and Golf R's from the factory have that done to them. So now that this is out, we will take out the axle. And now this is ready to come out. All we lack is one more 13 up top. So let's go to the other side, do the same thing, and then we'll pull the struts off and we'll show you how we swap the springs out. So we're on the left side, and this axle bolt's stuck in. So we took the axle bolt out. It doesn't push back in. Yeah, don't do that. Don't hit it with a hammer. Don't use the axle bolt. You're going to bind to the axle or buy the axle bolt. Yes, you can get it out that way. No, I don't recommend it. Yes, I've had to do it before. But we're also getting rid of the axle. It didn't really matter. If they're stuck in like this, take the axle bolt out. Get a brass punch like this, about this size. Notice how it's kind of axle shaped now. Put it in the end of the axle. Drive the axle out. This does not damage your axle. Like I said, brass is soft. It conforms to the pieces being hit into. But the axle's out. Now, might be kind of hard to see, but if you look in here, you can see the brass. But if you look inside there and you see these little chunks, there's Loctite inside here, green Loctite. Volkswagen did that from the factory to keep down axle rattle. On the CCs, back in the day, we had some problems with them. That was their fix. Loctite. Let's pull the axle out. And this is ready to come out. Let's go down and pull the struts out. We're going to pull the strut assembly out as a piece, as a whole unit. Get your bolt here ready. Like I said, this is how I do it. If you don't want to do it this way, you don't have to. You can pull the rotor off. But I basically squat down, put the rotor on my legs, and put my electric ratchet up here, holding it up. Once the bolt's loose, out comes your strut assembly. And there's your strut out and ready to go. Again, remember, these go in DOS trash. We don't use them again because we're putting on camster plates. If you're going to reuse them, that's fine. If not, it's up to you. Same thing's on the left side. Yes, it's kind of heavy. It's got a little weight to it. But that's all there is to it. That gets them out. Let's open some boxes apart like it's Christmas again. Alright, we got the boxes open. We got the springs from 34. These are S3 springs. When you're putting on springs, the springs always have to face numbers up. If they're on upside down, it can change the way the spring's set and how the springs actuate. And if you notice, the top of the spring is a tighter coil toward the top. The bottom is more open. This locks into your lower strut perch or spring perch in the bottom of it. So these are the 034 S3 springs from MagnaRide DCC. So we're going to throw these on this GLI, and it's going to be a very fun, very fast car. Alright, so we're going to swap out the spring. No, I'm not using the spring compressor. GTIs, GLIs, Golf Rs, the springs are already pretty well dampened down from the factory. You use a truck press if you want to. I don't. I've done a bunch of them. It's a 21 millimeter. Pops right off. Go a little slow at the end. It won't scare you as much. But there's your spring assembly, your strut bellow, your spring. Factory springs have dots. These markers tell you the spring rate of the spring. I have no clue what they mean. But in the catalog, in EDCA, it'll ask you how many dots. Yellow, orange, blue on the bottom spring. It tells you in EDCA what to look for. You can change out the spring rate by changing out the color of the spring. If you know what the colors meant, you know what spring rate was. Now, everything in my hand here, except this, is going to file 13. We're not reusing it. That and the strut mount, or the bump stop. That gets reused. But the bellow just comes out with your finger. Make sure the bellows are in good shape. They're not ripped, torn, busted, nothing like that. Nothing goes to the bottom of these. They stay free floating. They don't get moved. Maintain and keep these for later on if you decide to go back to stock, or if you have a bad strut bearing go back later on. These are still reusable as long as they're not beat up. You can see this dent. That's where the strut was sitting in it from the factory. That's normal. These bearings act as an upper ball joint for a pivot point, because you have a lower ball joint, it's also your pivot point. So these are what makes the car turn and pivot on the strut mount. So that's how that works. So we have a new strut bearing from 034 here, the street density strut bearing. It's a little tougher strut bearing for lowered cars. Does a lot better job. Nice and quiet. It's angled like it's supposed to be. Just a little better quality build. Those always work out really nice. I try to replace strut bearings every time we do a spring job. It's just better for the customer, better for the ride quality. The mounts can go either way. If it's high mileage, mounts. If it's low mileage, you can probably get by without doing it. So we're going to open up these camster plates. Take out the packets. Here's the bolts that come with it that are smaller or shorter. These are 12 millimeter bolts. They're different size. It comes with 6 of them. And you see how much different they are lengthwise compared to the factory ones. They're well over 3/4 of a length difference. Okay. These are also flange head bolts, so no washers needed. The washer's built onto it. So these are the camster plates. The caster plates they have are a little different. These, as you can tell, are offset. There's a bushing that's replaceable and rebuildable, completely rebuildable here. The caster plates are not offset backwards. They're offset just here and pushed out. The camster plates are offset backwards and around. And the reason I said about the bolt holes, this bolt can't be but so deep. And this one will actually go through here if you use the factory bolts. You can reuse the factory bolt in the front one if you had to. If you had to, you could. I don't recommend it. But these are the camster plates from 034. They are phenomenal. Also, they are not side dependent. But they do matter how they're put in. That being said, if you're going to reuse your factory strut mounts, this dot right there, that line corresponds to this line. This line goes into the car like this. This line here goes backwards toward the inner fender. This is the only way they'll go in. I think you can put them in wrong one way, but it makes the caster camber reading really off. These camster plates are the same thing, but 034 was very smart, and they CNC machined a little groove right there, like a different spot into it, so you know which way they go. Also, your dot's still right there. Now that dot is for your strut bearing to line up on. So it's lined up, can't move, locked in place. So there's that. So we got the bellow, got the strut mount in, put it and pop it into place. Then once you get it into place, pull back just a hair, make sure it spins freely. Okay? If it doesn't spin freely, something's not right. If this is not in there properly, it can cause noises. Pops, clicks, rattles, weird noises. Noises that can be misdiagnosed as being something wrong. And the spring, like I said, goes on numbers facing up. So you've got all your stuff there. Put this on here. Put the spring on to where it locks like this. That's a whole lot lower spring. And we'll throw the bump stop on. All the way down. These ain't gonna work. Change your plans. We're gonna put GTI springs in here instead. This was more of a testing deal. Like I said, nobody makes lowering springs other than APR for GLIs, especially the Mark 7s. So everything else will fit just fine. I do know that. The GTI springs in the rear are a little bit lower than we would like. So we're going to probably end up putting S3 springs in the rear just to get the low a little less, because it drops really bad in the rear with GTI springs to the point that it's like a reverse squatted truck. Nobody likes that. So once you get these camster plates on, they are kind of finicky to get pushed down. You kind of got to twist them and push them into place. Get some threads showing, push the spring down, put your nut on. And then tighten her back down. And she's tight. And the comment sections go wild on that one right there. Because I didn't use a torque wrench and I didn't use a special tool. Done a million of them, never a problem of them. So this is back in the correct position. So when you're looking at the strut and everything, this should face towards you. This triangle goes back up in the car just like that. So we'll go ahead and do the other side, then we'll throw them back in the car. Like I said, make sure the spring here sits on the lock. Keeps the spring from turning on you. Make sure your bearings line up correctly. You can see in here, the dots are all lined up. That's what you want. So you can see right there where your little dots are lined up. And that little dot there is pointing where you need it. All this is good to go. I always leave them facing down. This way you don't damage the threads on the ball joint. You don't bend the backing plate. This does have the performance pack on it. It has the locking diff, the bigger GTI Golf R brakes. It's a little more robust. So a lot bigger kit, a lot bigger system. Compared to the Mark 6s, these are a whole lot better car. The engines are way better. The transmissions are way better. This one is a DQ350 7-speed DSG. The customer does want to do, eventually, a DSG tune. We are in the works of doing that now, just because the 7-speed leaves a lot to be desired. It's not that great. As far as rev hang, when you're in sport mode, it doesn't stay in sport mode that much. It starts off in drive. There's no way to keep it in sport all the time. That's what we'd like to have. So, all right, so our springs are assembled. Our struts are ready to go. Let's put them back in. Here comes the fun part. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it up in here. Like so. Hold it like this. And then keep your bolts kind of close. Oh, well. Stay that. There they are. And then you got the holes up here. And you kind of got a feel for it. If you eventually get good at this, you'll find the hole the first time. So that one's in. Now your other two will have to go in at a bit of an angle. Not so much angle, but because the plate's at an angle. So I'll go ahead now and push down the control arm and put the axle kind of back in so this sits where it needs to, and you can turn it however you need to get it into place. Now that the axle's in, strut's in the right spot, we can go ahead and twist the strut to put the other bolt in. Just like that. Now your back one, your third one, goes in just easy as you please. It's already lined up. Don't go too tight with these. You will break them. They will strip out. They will not hold in the car anymore. Just get them tight. There is torque spec for those on the 034 instruction sheets. Like I said, I've done a bunch of them. I just kind of know where the tightness is for them. We will put a link to their website so you can get these parts if you want to. Look at the diagrams, look up the instructions, all that stuff. Read them for yourself. Like I said, this is how I do the springs. This is how I've done a bunch of them. Assembly is the exact same way as disassembly. The only difference is on the axle splines, which we'll show you what we're talking about here in a second. On the axle splines, put a little dab of blue Loctite. Volkswagen's is green. Get some blue Loctite and some red Loctite. Put some blue on the splines, some red on the bolt. The Loctite for the blue is 242 Loctite. That's what you can get from the stores. We'll be using Volkswagen today. I have a bunch of it. And then the red is 262. That's your numbers you're looking for. You can get small little tubes, you don't need a whole bunch unless you do it for a living. Then you can buy the Mondo bottle. Otherwise, get you some small tubes. A dab will do you. You can Loctite these in place if you really want to. You don't have to. It's not a necessity. It's not like a major deal. Tight's tight. Too tight's broke. So, that being said, let's put the other side in, and then we'll go over how to put the axles in with Loctite and tighten them down, all that stuff. Alright, so we're done under the hood. The struts are in. The hood cow's back together. The hood's closed. You're done under the hood. You can move on to the more fun stuff. Here's the Volkswagen Loctite that we use. This is the green that they call it. This is from Volkswagen. This is the red that you can get from Loctite. This is actually from Volkswagen, but it comes in this bottle. So these are the ones you can go pick up from your local Volkswagen store. This stuff is kind of pricey. It's like 40 something dollars a bottle. This stuff is like 75 a bottle from them. So like I said, unless you do a lot of them, you can get the blue and the red and the small little tubes from O'Reilly's, any parts house, whatever, for like $4 or $5. They offer a variety pack as well. So we're going to go up in the air with it. We're going to put some Loctite on and put the front end back together right quick. We pulled the axle back out on this side to show you where the Loctite will go. So take a little bit of the blue, green. See how it's a little green color? We're going to kind of see the splines back in here a little bit. So we're going to put a little dab on the splines. Not a whole lot. Just a little bit right there. Shows that it's on there. This helps the axle stay in place better, especially under high load, high torque, stuff like that. Hard launches. Keeps them rattling around. And now the axle's back in. Now we'll take the axle bolt and put some red Loctite up here where the other red Loctite was. Now red Loctite is what we call forever Loctite. That being said, if you heat it up to 107 degrees Fahrenheit, it will release. Honda uses this on their crank bolts and has for years. So put the axle bolt back in by hand. Always start it by hand. And then you'll torque it down before you get done with it. That being said, this bolt and the axle, this bolt pulls the axle all the way flush to the bearing and squishes into the bearing to help it have that seat that it needs so the bearing for the wheel bearing doesn't go bad. Front end's done. We're ready to go for the dog bone insert with an arm and lock and collar kit to the subframe, which is collars that go up in here on the subframe to keep it from shifting and moving. So we're adding caster and camber, so we're going to lock out the subframe so it can't move around and can't sway or shift on you. The dog bone is to help with wheel hop, so you don't have to go to stage 1 or stage 2 mounts. These two are 18s, this is a 21. So we're going to take this out, file 13, and put in brand new, better, bigger, gooder stuff. The kit comes with new bolts, so you can trash these. The long one goes in the back, short one goes in the front. As you notice, the transmission and engine are just rocking in there now. Perfectly fine, don't worry about it. You'll have to move it some to get it back in place. It's kind of a pain. 21 for this. It's pretty tight too. Again, comes with another new bolt. And trash those. We are not replacing the puck. This is not getting replaced. We're putting an insert inside of it. Again, not replacing this. This is the factory arm. There's rubber bushing inside there. They're not weak, but they're not strong either. These are new bolts, and this is your lower, goes in the bottom. Like so, all this does is keep the dog bone for the engine turbine from moving too much on a high load. So when this goes in, should go in like this right here, and the opening should be in the bottom, just like that. There's a little notch inside there that goes into this. So if you look up inside here, there's a notch straight up. It's kind of hard to see probably, but there's a small little notch right up in there. There's a notch in the back of this that goes into and it sits into. So if you ever don't know how it goes in, that's how you know. So I'll take a little silicone spray, lube it up a little bit to get it up in there. Ain't gonna hurt anything. It's very tight to get up in there. Everything's nice and tight and difficult to get in, so that's, you know, what you want. You can use a floor jack to do this as well. Just easy, constant, steady pressure. All we're doing is getting the insert to go up above and push in, because you're going past that fitting up in top that I showed you, and that's why you need that. Now that's up and in. You can take and push it up in there with a long screwdriver or pry bar. One. So it's up and in. Now that's up where it needs to be at. That's in the hole. Yep, it's all inside there. Now the lower will just go up underneath that and lock this into place. That's all it does. And they join together. They never touch, but they'll join together. So this will actually go up inside of here and snap into place like so, and you put a new bolt in it. Now, also you need to keep in mind, there are two different versions to this. You have a version 1, you have a version 2. Know which one you have before you order it. Otherwise, you'll have something you don't need. The version 2, pretty much all MQB cars. That being said, there are some version 1s that can go for this. Passat, Jetta, stuff like that. Most of those are version 1. Your version 2s are typically from the website 2014 and a half and newer. So just getting this bushing set back in there, getting the arm all the way back in so we can get the transmission bolted back into place. That can be Loctited in, or it don't have to be, either one. I typically don't, just because I don't feel like it needs to be. But we are going to have to use the old bolts for the dog bone, because this one has bigger bolts. Because the 7-speed does use different bolts. You want to get those kind of started. Pull the transmission back where it's supposed to go. There it goes. Off to the side a little bit. That's in, that's in. So the 034 dog bone arm and insert is in. So now we're going to do the locking collar kit. Locking collar kit's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. You've got, on the MQB platforms, you have two 16s back here. Some of the earlier versions were 13s. These are 16s, and 18 here, here, one up in here, one up in here, and, excuse me, two 13s here and here. We're going to pop these 16s loose and pop them out. If you don't have wobble sockets, I recommend buying something to do this job because it's going to make it a lot easier. A wobble 16 is great to get these little brackets off with. These bolts get reused. The subframe bolts, however, will get replaced, and this time I mean it. Take the exhaust loose just from here. You do not have to drop the subframe all the way down. You can snake these in, put them in, and put the bolts back in and wiggle it. Now, that being said, you're going to have to move the subframe around to get the locking collars to set into place. And I'll show you that here in a second. So for the subframe bolts, they're 18s, and there's 18 up in here. Through the control arm, take the bolts loose and take them out. Keep these on each side of the car so you don't forget which one's the which. If you do forget, I'll show you a little trick to memorize what's what. Alright, so quick Volkswagen part number lesson. On the back side of these, there's a part number, 518G. Okay? The other one will say 517 or 519G. The reason they say that, your odd part numbers typically denote left side of the vehicle. Your even part numbers denote right side of the vehicle. So if you get confused, don't know which one goes where, look at the last of your part numbers. Door control modules, headlights, that kind of stuff, they all have an ending part number that's either even or odd. Tells you left or right. So the 517 Golf is your left side. 518 Golf is your passenger side. So if you get it confused in your hand, don't know where they're going, which one goes to where, look at your part numbers. 518, she's a right-hander. 517, she's a left-hander. That's all you got to do. It's an easy way to memorize them, easy way to know. And you're looking up parts, and you don't know if it's the left or right side tie rod, left or right side ball joint. The ball joints are stamped L and R. But if you have the part numbers in your hand and can't tell, look for the even or odd number at the end. That's how you know. That goes for almost every Volkswagen Audi part number. The ending number at the very end for a left or right side part, odd is left, even is right. The first numbers, a lot of times tell you the engine size, chassis code, stuff like that. That's a whole different subject, whole different day, but that's a quick lesson on what those part numbers mean and how to tell what's what left to right. Collar kit, Mo 34. That's they call it a subframe bushing set or subframe bushing kit. It comes with new subframe bolts. They are all four the exact same. Same length, same style, same everything. Put them out of the way. Your bushings are different, however. And you want to put these on the bottom of the bolts, these on top in the subframe. See that little notch, a little knurl? That goes up into the hole, locks them into place. So I open them up and put the tops in first, just because it's going to be easier. So take either your floor jack, or in our case, little pole jack, and come down just enough. You can see there's a gap right there. There's a hole. You can squeeze it up in here, go a little further with it. It'll come down, take your locking collar, slide it in. Same thing on this side. Take your locking collar, slide it in. Front's the same way. The front, you'll have to probably pull it down a little bit to get it in, but it'll slide right in. Same thing goes for back here. Slide it right on in. So this goes in like so and goes up in through here. Now on these, there's a little different you got to do to them. Back to our little lesson earlier. This piece has to go in here and go like this, otherwise it ain't gonna work. This just slides up and in, bolt goes up and through, goes right to your locking collar, and then you can take this and you can turn it to get it going. One of these will not start instantly. You'll need to loosen up the other ones. Take this in and go back and forth and kind of tackle the subframe a little bit. You may have to move it up a little bit, move it down. Because it's trying to lock it into place and it can't. So the bolts are snug, they're not tight. These are not tight. Do not tighten them up just yet. The reason I say that, you've got to put those 16s we took out back in. If you get those tight, they're not square, you'll strip the bolts out. So get them where they need to be at and start them. Once they're in, tighten them down. And then just tighten the subframe bolts. And the subframe's back in. Put your 213s back in for the exhaust. And your locking collar kit is now installed, and you are ready to have a lot more fun. When you're putting these in, you want to make sure you don't let the subframe drop too far, because you will, and I mean you will, damage some very expensive components. These are your light sensors on the front. If you have a lighting pack or anything, you have a light sensor here and one over here. They're about $2.85 a piece if you break one. These arms are not sold separate. Yes, you can find them online separate, but they're not going to be factory. These arms go up to the sensor, which plugs in. If you've gone too far with this, these can break. Taking the springs out, same thing. The rack and everything is bolted to your subframe, which is inside the car. The pinch bolt is. Be careful not to extend that too far and break it. Aside from that, at this point, you're ready to put the tires on the front back on, and you're done with the front end completely. So on the front end, we put in now GTI lowering springs, camster plates, strut bearings, dog bone insert and arm, and locking collar kit. So the front of this car is ready to rock and roll. Now we'll go to the back. And the back is where all the fun begins. The back is a lot quicker, a lot faster, a lot easier. If you're just doing springs, it's cut and dry. Doing the sway bar, it's a little more involved. First things first, on the sway on the rear, take off these brackets back here for this light sensor. It will snap. It is expensive. Very expensive. It's a T25. You'll take your T25, take the 2 bolts out, the bracket comes off. Out she comes. Now just flopping the wind ain't gonna hurt nothing. It's just loosen the control arm so it doesn't get hit or broke. Put your bolts over here out the way so you keep up with them. Now, for the sway bar, it's gonna be easier if you pull the exhaust out. If you have factory exhaust, it's a little more of a pain. We have an AW touring exhaust on here, so we can actually take it out a little easier. So we have a little more room to wiggle. So we're going to take out the center section of the exhaust right quick, pop the hanger off, pop the exhaust down, drop the sway bar, put the springs in, call it done. Side note, if you have a factory exhaust, GTI, MQB, GLI, any of those, the exhaust is not going to come out this easy. It's going to be a lot bigger, a lot heavier. Up here will be a 13mm squeeze clamp. Take those bolts loose, take the exhaust back. There's a 13 here you can take loose, take this crash bar out, this subframe or this brace bar out. Take the whole exhaust up in the back. There's 2 13s back here you can take out as well that are up here. You can take the exhaust out that way, or you can drop it down and support it and take it out that way. You don't have to remove the exhaust. It is a lot easier if you do. Alright, that clamp's undone. You can get a set of these exhaust hanger pliers from like Napa or Raleigh, something like that. And you can basically push the exhaust hanger rubbers right off the end of the exhaust and out of the car. That simple. Great tool. Pick you one up. Amazon's got them. I think Lyle made this one. I can't remember exactly. They're pretty cheap. 25, 30 bucks maybe. If you do a lot of exhaust, it's great to have. If you don't, it's not as bad. It just pops right out. It's also aftermarket, so it comes out pretty easily. Best way to get it out. Now, like I said, you can leave it in this rear subsection, and it was hanging there. It's not a big deal. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. These are number 10 triple squares for the sway bars. Take them out. Take the 13s here loose. 18, 18, 13. Remember, your shock bolt is your longer bolt. Your subframe or your spindle bolt is your short bolt. Don't get confused. It can cause issues if you do. So just remember, when you take the bolts out, your long bolt is always your shock bolt. We'll go ahead and take out the sway bar first. Get it out of the way. These do get reused. The new one does not come with these. The new one does come with new bolts for everything else though. And your sway bar's out. Now we'll remove it from the car. Don't take the bolts all the way out on the top. Just to avoid having an issue. This way you can get them loose, get them where you want them. This sway bar is very small and very light, so it's not a big hassle. But now you can take the top bolts all the way out, roll your sway bar out, and she's out. So you're going to pop the bushing out, and if you look, there's a hole here that puts the grease fitting in, and this hole here goes into the bushing in here. So that's how you get grease into them. So I'm not putting the inlets on just yet, because I have to take it back off anyway to put the sway bar or the springs on. So we're just going to put this on for now. Got the sway bar in, and it's a 6mm Allen. I already put Loctite on them. We'll get them snugged up so we can get them evened up. So you can see, sway bar's in, moves freely. We will not grease these up until we're done with everything. At that point in time, then I'll grease them up. You can leave the shock plugged up. It doesn't have to come unplugged for this. It's not a big deal. Take a little pressure off the spring. On the rear, you do have to compress the spring, otherwise it will kill you or hurt you very badly. So take note. Again, this is your short bolt. I'll show you the difference in a second. So that's your control arm bolt going to the spindle. The nuts are the exact same side to side. These are your control arm bolt, shock bolt. Shock bolt's longer. Just a little bit, but it's just enough to make a big difference. Pressure's off. Pull the control arm down. Twist the spring to get it unlocked. There's a tab inside the perk that locks the spring in. Take your top mount off, keep it with you. So we're going to put GTI springs on the rear as well. If we use S3 springs, it's going to go way too low. So the idea of using the S3 springs was, again, for testing purposes and trial and error, because nobody other than APR makes the springs for these. So it's a little difficult to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Again, like I said before, you want to put the numbers facing up. 034, and there's your numbers. This snaps into place, and if you look at the bottom, it's kind of hard to see. I'll just take it off. The spring set right there in that notch. Put it back in the exact same spot, just like that. Kind of hard to see, but if you look down inside here, there's a notch right here, and that spring will lock into that notch. So you'll put the spring in, and the notch is right here. Take the spring, turn it backwards, and then turn it forward. It'll stop spinning, it's locked into place. And then you'll push all this back up into place with your pole jack. Grab our long shock bolt. Go ahead and send it through. All right, now, when I put these bolts back in, you can typically get them to push all the way through, and then you got to push up on the back side of the control arm, and it'll go right in. Just depends on how much force you want to use. You can also run them right through, and they'll actually go right on in if you get them turned right. Just like that. Lines it right up, doesn't hurt the threads, doesn't hurt anything, puts them right together. And then we'll tighten it all down. The only difference between the left side and this side is the sensor we took off earlier. That's the exact only difference. Other than that, they're exactly the same. We got the springs installed, they're in, we put the sensor back on, everything's tightened down, ready to go. The only thing left is to put the sway bar end links on. This is a fully adjustable sway bar. It's got two dots, a soft and a stiff. We're going to put this on stiff setting. We're going to put in 034's end links. They're spherical end links. They are fully rebuildable. They are a very nice piece. They're solid. I run them and I love them. I've never had a problem out of them. This does come with misalignment spacers, which is what these pieces are. So these are your bottom spacers. These are your top spacers that go for this bolt right here. And they go a certain way. And the way you can tell which one's which, the bottom spacer is a small hole for the 13mm bolt we're going to put back in. The top spacer has a big hole for the big 8mm or 6mm Allen bolt will go back in the top ones. So we got our misalignment spacers in. We got our bolt. It will go through. Comes with a new nut. Tighten it up. So you'll put the end link through the control arm like so. And you got to kind of keep it somewhat square. It's easier to do with the sway bar not hooked up. That's why I'm doing it this way, to show you how it's a little easier to do it this way. Bolt goes this way, nut goes here. You take your other one, do the exact same thing with it on both sides. So the bolt goes through the sway bar, goes into the misalignment spacer, and then the nut goes on the other side of it to tighten it down. And this just pulls it over to it. And as you tighten it up, it'll move into it. And you can pre-install these on the sway bar before you put it on the car, or you can do it this way. Either way, I do it this way just because it's a little easier to get it on there. Get everything in place. And that's a 6mm there. And your sway bar is installed. It's easy as that. Now all you have to do is put your exhaust back on, put your wheels and tires back on, and have alignment done. We're going to put the exhaust back in. We're going to mount and balance some tires right quick, get them back on, and do the alignment, and we'll show you that. Before we do that, we're all going to grease these up though. A good quality chassis grease is all you really need. Nothing too major. Couple shots so the grease comes out. Pull it back off. Like I said, that's pretty much the gist of it. From start to finish. This is roughly, for an experienced technician, about a 4-hour job. Most shops charge between 4 and 8 hours, depending on what you want done, plus alignment. So you get what you pay for. So if they only charge you 2.5, 3 hours to put your springs on, and you have noises when it's all said and done, well, you got what you paid for. So if you think you can tackle it yourself, good luck. Enjoy it, have fun with it. But if it's more than you're really prepared to handle, or you have to makeshift tools, pay somebody or call a friend that does this for a living or something like that, don't get over your head. Don't do more than you're really comfortable with, because you can get hurt very quickly and very fast. So now we're on to the more fun part. We're going to put the wheels and tires together. We're putting a set of bronze super speed flow formed wheels on here. These are 18 by 8.5 ET40. But this wheel package, he'll be running a 245 4018, which will give him a little more footprint on the ground, a little more traction, make the car more fun to drive. He currently has Continental DWS 06s on there, Extreme Contacts. We're going to be pairing these with the Extreme Contact Sports, which is a lot more aggressive style tread. It's a more summery tread. Got good cycles for water. It's a very sticky tire when warm. It's a very good tire for all around fun, autocross, going to the back roads. Not so much track. It's not a really track friendly tire, but as a tire that's really fun to go out and have fun with and go to the Tail of the Dragon, find some back roads up in the mountains, stuff like that. It's a great tire for that. So we're going to mount and bounce these. Now these tires are not directional. They're what we call asymmetrical, but they are inside-outside. So you have to make sure you keep an eye on that. I doubt many of you will be putting on tires at your house unless you have a mount and balance at your house, which in that case, I guess do your own. But we're going to put these on for him, get them all squared up, get them all set up, get him ready to go out and tear up some roads. Which one of these cones fits the back of the wheel. This is the black one. We'll frame them for this one. Each one's different. Each one's a different cone for it. Slap the cone on. Put the wheel on. And you put your nut in. Then we'll take the data inset arm and we'll measure them. And that tells the machine how big the wheel is, how wide the wheel is. Lower the hood, it'll balance it. We'll put weights where it goes, and tires balance. And it tells you where to put the weights at as well. How much to put there, everything like that. This is a brand new wheel, nothing to clean off. But if it wasn't a brand new wheel, we would take and clean off the wheel really good, get all the junk off of it, all the old weights, all the debris, stuff like that, and call it done. She's balanced. One down, 3 to go. Alright, everything's done, the wheels and tires are on. Do a quick test drive. She's a lot tighter, a whole lot more agile, more nimble, a lot more confident feeling. The car is very planted, has a very good track. So now we're going to line it up to make sure it maintains that good feel. I personally do a factory alignment on the first initial install of the springs. Once it's gone 1,000 miles, we allow them to come back and we do either a recheck on the alignment to see if it's still in, or we'll do a modified alignment for them if they want to. Typically, I recommend customers that daily the car, but also do a little spirited driving to match camber front to rear and zero the toe. That helps the car track better in the road, helps it not hunt the groove if the crown of the road is bad. It helps it stay more centered and more easy feeling. So with a zero toe, it's basically a shotgun method. The car just point, shoot, go. Just remember, your eyes tell the car where to go, not your hands. Your hands get inputs from your eyes. So if you look, you're going. If you don't look where you're going, you're never going to make it there. So always look when you're driving aggressively, whether you're autocross, track, or if you're out on the street being stupid, then be safe. But always look where you're going. Always look where you want to be at, not where you're trying. Don't look at the mailbox, you'll hit it. Look past it or around it. Looking ahead is another key factor as well. So we're going to get it lined up, get the heads hung. We're going to get the ride height sensors on everything. So we'll go ahead and put the car up on the rack and get it all set up. All right, the heads are hung. I'm going to go ahead and put the ride height sensors on there. The ride height sensors just stick on with a little bit of sticky pad, a little double-sided tape basically. And they tell the machine how high or how low the car is compared to where it wants to see it. So we'll actually see how much it dropped. The car, typical ride height in these is about 13.4 inches. This one's set up to do it in inches. A lot of them do it in millimeters. So these just go on the car. You got double-sided tape. You peel off both sides of it, and it sticks to the fender just like that, in line with the center line of the axle. Now we'll scan the barcode. Does my car working on, and the machine does everything else for us. Now just tells you all the warnings, what the car has, what it don't have, stuff like that. So we're gonna go back here, and we're going to roll the car forward and fold that mirror in. It's gonna block the sensor if we don't. And then you want to pull your pins for your caster plates so you can measure caster and camber. Let's pick up ride height. And that's your front to rear ride height. The car has been dropped after we lowered it. So we're going to center and lock the steering wheel. This way the steering wheel can't move hard with toe adjustments. And then we'll go up front and see how bad she is. So the caster's a lot more positive than what it was. The camber's 2.5 degrees negative on the front, which is fine. That's a lot of camber, a lot of caster, a lot of camber, but it'll handle very well. The toe is out a lot. A lot. So hopefully bringing this in will bring both of these more closer to get this cross out of the way. The problem with the cross caster, it can cause a pull or a drift. In this case, it will cause a drift or a pull to the right. The rear, however, that camber's about equal to the front, but today we're going to put the rear camber at about 2 degrees as opposed to being factory, and we're going to put the toe at factory in the rear. The reason I'm not going to put the rear camber at full, that's just too much right now. Let the car get settled in, see how it does, and then go from there. When he comes back, we'll probably put it at 2.5 to match the front, and then zero the toe. The front toe is in left field though. So we'll set the rear up, get the rear end done, and go to the front. So on the rear, you have adjustment points here for your toe, and up in the corner, up here, is camber. And the camber can be fully adjusted in or out, as much as need be, that the eccentrics will allow. Typically, I can see up to 3 degrees camber negative, up to positive like 1.5, 1.6, something like that. But camber on the rear of these is fully adjustable and should be adjusted during the alignment process regardless. So if your alignment shops tell you they're not adjustable, they're wrong. And we can actually watch the bar graph up front go to 2 degrees as we turn the eccentric bolts further and further. Now we go to the front. Now, you remember before the front was really bad out and the rear was just a little bit out. That's how the rear affects the front. So the rear toe was out, and this is at 1.13, now it's at 1.09. That was like 0.79 or 0.81. But the rear being out made the front even more out. So you get the rear straight, the front comes in a little better. So, and this will float back and forth a bit because the car is moving and jouncing as it goes up and down the lift. As long as it doesn't move a whole like half a degree, you're okay. A degree or two, or 0.1 degrees is fine. Not a big deal. But we always start with the right side when we adjust toe on a car. You always start with the right side, and you always start with the right rear. So now we'll move the toe in. And the caster's going more out, which is what we want. To get that cross away. Now yes, 9 degrees of caster is a lot. But this car will respond very well to inputs and going back to the head. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to be too much. And the person that drives it's pretty capable of handling extra caster and camber. The alignment's done. We got a little bit of cross caster and cross camber. It's not a big deal. Should be okay. We'll have to see how it does. That's a lot of caster. The cross is only 0.4. Shouldn't make it might be a small drift, not a pull, but they should be okay. Now we'll print them off a copy and let them have the car. If you have any questions, if you're in the North Carolina area and you want to have this done to your car, or have us do suspension work to your car, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, email us, find us on our website at gowithaci.com. Message us. We'll get you a quote together and hopefully do some work in the future with you. Check back in later on for an update on how the car's doing at 1,000 miles.